Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I'm Dr. Asma Sadiq from Anatomy Department. And as you all know that now we have switched to online classes. So I'm going to continue my lectures which we were discussing in the physical classes, that is about the general aspects of the bones. So far, we have already discussed all the classifications regarding the bony tissue, but here I am going to revise it again for you people. That first of all, that you have seen that the bone that is making up the skeletal framework of the human body, and we have already discussed that there are two types of the skeleton: axial skeleton, which is making up the central body skeleton, and the appendicular skeleton, that is the appendages, upper limb and the lower limb. So the total 206 bones in the human body, which is making up its skeletal framework, they are classified as the axial bones, which are present along the axial skeleton. These include skull, sternum, hip bones, and the all vertebrae which are present in the backbone. Then are the appendicular bones, which are making up the appendicular skeleton. These are the upper and lower limb bones, and these are the human. Now there was the structural classification, and in the structural classification you have seen that the bones are classified as the compact bones, which are also known as the cortical bone, and there is the spongy bones, which are also known as the cancellous or trabecular bones. So structurally it is classified as compact and spongy bones. So how these look like, that in a bony tissue, which you have seen, this is a long bone, and we have done its different parts. As you have seen, the shaft of the long bone is diaphysis, and its ends, which are present at the proximal or distal ends of the long bone, these are known as proximal epiphysis and the distal epiphysis. So the ends are known as epiphysis of the long bones. So the structure of a bone, if you look from outer to inner side, this is going to have periosteum, that is the fibrous covering, and this is having very blood vessel, so that is very vascular structure, and it is also having the osteoprogenitor cells, which can active and transform into the osteoblast cells. Then there is the bony cortex, which you have seen that this is made up of the compact bone, and this compact bone is going to have typical Haversian system. And towards the medullary cavity, you can appreciate the trabeculae of the bone, which are going to have the trabecular pattern of the bone, and these are known as trabecular or spongy bone. So between the trabeculae, these spaces, these are filled up with the red bone marrow, and these that's why this is also known as a porous bone. But the compact bone is non-porous, having compact nature, tightly adherent and compactly arranged osteons. These are present in the compact bone throughout the length of the bone. Inside then is the medullary cavity, which in the long bones is filled up with the yellow marrow. Now this is showing you the typical pattern of the Haversian system of a compact bone, in which you can see these cylindrical osteons, and these osteons are going to be located in the bony cortex mostly, and here you appreciate there is a central canal, which is the Haversian canal, and that is surrounded by the lamellas of the collagen fibers, which is making up our typical osteon here. So these cylindrical osteons making up the Haversian system, these are components of the compact bone. So there is a central canal, which lodges the blood vessels, and the central canals of 1 and 2 adjacent osteons, they combine and intercommunicate together with the Volkmann's canal, also known as perforating canals. You can see here that these blood vessels from one osteon can communicate to the blood vessel of the other osteon. So that's how the central canals of one osteon intercommunicating to the other osteon, that is through the perforating or Volkmann's canal. Then around the central canal are the collagen lamellars, and in between these lamellars are the spaces which are known as lacunae, and in these lacunae the osteocytes and osteoblast cells, they are resting. So here osteocytes and osteoblast cells are present in the lacunae, which is the spaces in between the lamella of the collagen fibers. So these lamellas, they making up the walls around the central canal, so these are surrounding it, and then there are many osteons present in the cortex of the bone, making it a compact, that is a compact bone. So this is peripheral 2/3 of the compact bone. You can also see here that the periosteum, that is having these interdigitating fibers with that of the peripheral lamellas of the osteons. These are known as the Sharp's fiber. So these are interdigitating and interconnecting fibers from the periosteum to the lamellas of the bony cortex. So here again you can see many osteons which are compactly arranged in the bony cortex, and this whole structure, that is an osteon, and multiple osteons together, they are making up the compact bone which is present in the bony cortex. And towards the medullary cavity, now you can appreciate there are the trabecules. These trabecules here, the collagens is also going to arranged in lamellas, but they are making very randomly oriented trabecular pattern, and in between the trabeculae there are the spaces, and these spaces are for the red bone marrow. So mostly in the spongy bone there is red bone marrow. So here you can see that structure of a spongy bone, that here the osteon, or you can say the Haversian system, is absent. You cannot see here any Haversian system, and the lamellas of the collagen fibers, these are arranged in the trabeculae. Also there are lacunae which are going to have the osteocytes, and you can also see this one cell, that is osteoclast. As I have already told you that the three cells in a bone, osteocytes, which are the resting cells, when they become active, these are known as osteoblast cells, and the osteoclast cells are the one which are bone eating cells, or they are helping in the bone resorption. So this one, that is the structure of a compact bone, and here you can see this is the structure of a spongy bone, which due to this structural framework making it a bit soft. So here I would like to show you the differences between the compact bone and the cancellous bone. It is also the cortical and the spongy bone. So definition about its shape and about its fat storage. As you know, there is a bone marrow, that is fatty bone marrow and yellow marrow in the compact bone, and there is no fat storage, which I have shown you here in the tabulated form. These are very important, so you have to focus on all these parameters and these differences between spongy and the compact bone to remember it, because these are very important university questions or can be asked during the viva. So these are very important differences, and whenever there is a question on differences, you must have to write them in a tabulated form. Hopefully we have done in the lectures about the developmental classifications, and I know that you must remember about its concept, that how intramembranous ossification and intracartilaginous ossifications are going to take place. And then the bones developing by intramembranous ossification are called membranous bone, and their examples are the clavicle, and you have seen the bones in the skull like maxilla, the skull vault. These are the membranous bone, in which directly mesenchymal tissue transform into the bony structure. And if the mesenchymal tissue is going to form an intermediate cartilage, and then this cartilage is developing into the bony tissue, then it is intracartilaginous ossification, also known as endochondral ossification. And the bones which are developing by this ossification process, then these are the cartilaginous bone. And all the adult bones in the human, then ribs and vertebra, all these bones are the cartilaginous bone. There are certain bones which are developing by both membranous and cartilaginous ossification. These are the bones in which there some parts are developing by membranous ossification and the other parts are developing by cartilaginous ossification. So the bones which are developing partly by membranous and partly by cartilaginous ossification, their examples are the occipital bone, the temporal bone, the sphenoid bone. As you will see that these bones are going to have different parts. So there some parts are developing by cartilaginous ossification and some by membranous ossification. For the ossification process, which are the process for the development of the bone, here are the primary center of ossification and the secondary center of ossification. So these two. So here in this slide you can easily see that that is the development of the bone by intracartilaginous ossification. That ossification process, please keep in mind, is also known as osteogenesis. So this is intracartilaginous osteogenesis, in which you can see this is the model of hyaline cartilage which is initially developed from mesenchymal tissue. You can see this is diaphysis and there are the two ends which are the proximal and distal epiphysis. So this is the hyaline cartilage, and then in the center, in the middle of the shaft of the long bone, that is diaphysis, the primary ossification center appear, and also there is the nutrient artery which enters at this primary ossification center of the long bone. So from here the bone is going to develop from the lengthwise manner longitudinally upward and in downward direction. So the bone is developing as now this cartilage is going to become ossified. Its chondroblasts are becoming the osteoblast initially, and then this is forming the bone in the lengthwise manner proximally and distally. And when reaching towards the epiphysis, the secondary center of ossification, they develop for the epiphysis, for the ends of the long bones. And most of the time the secondary center of ossification appears after birth. And there are two areas you can appreciate where initial hyaline cartilage is going to persist. So these are the areas around the articular ends of the long bones, which are the articular surfaces. This is known as articular cartilage, and in between the diaphysis and epiphysis is the cartilage that persists. It is known as the epiphyseal plate, epiphyseal cartilage, or the growth plate. This is one which is helping for the non-fusion. Then there was the further classification which is according to the shape, or this is the one which is also known as the morphological classification. So according to the shape, the bones are long bones, as you have already discussed with me in the lectures, that long bones are the one which are having one diaphysis and two epiphysis. All the long bones like radius, ulna, tibia, humerus and femur, these are the long bones in the upper and lower limb having diaphysis and two epiphysis. Now the long short or the miniature bones are the one which are going to have only one epiphysis. So this is having one diaphysis and one epiphysis. As you have seen the metacarpal bones and metatarsal bones, I will show you the pictures in next slide. Then are the short bones which are having no diaphysis and no epiphysis. Then are the flat bones, irregular bones, having the shape just like that. The pneumatic bones are those which are going to have the air in them. So these are the bones which contain the air cells. So till that we have covered during the lectures. Now the sesamoid bone and the supernumerary bones, these were left. So moving on to one by one. So initially you have seen the typical long bone which is going to have one diaphysis and the two ends which are the two epiphyses. Now the metacarpal bones and the metatarsal bones are going to have the long short bones. The carpal bones and tarsal bones in the foot are the short bones. These are the flat bones. We will discuss in next slide its typical feature. Then the bones which are having different spines, projections, processes, these are irregular bone like vertebra in human body. So here this is the one which is the long short bone. Having this one epiphysis, this one is the diaphysis, and at one end is only the epiphysis, which you can see very easily here. And the other ends are just the bases. These are the base of the long bones. So these metacarpal and same in the foot are the metatarsal bones are present. They are the examples of long, short and miniature bones. And these pieces of the bones which are 8 carpal bones and same bones in foot are the tarsal bones. These are 7 tarsal bones in foot. These are the short bones. Now here this one which is having many irregularities, the transverse process and spinous process body. Again here in the hip bone you can see many projections. There are tuberosities, crest and spines. So vertebra and the hip bones are the example of irregular bones. This is showing you the typical structure of the flat bones. As you have seen that the flat bones, the examples are the vault of the skull, the sternum, ribs and the scapula. You have already seen the scapula during your dissection classes. So typically the flat bones, they are going to have that inner spongy bone. That layer of the spongy bone is known as diploe. That diploe is the characteristic feature of the flat bone. This is present in between the outer two thin plates of the compact bone. So there are peripheral thin plates of the compact bone, and in the inner side it is filled up with the spongy bone, that is diploe. So that is having that typical characteristic trabecular pattern, and its appearance is just sponge like. Here you can appreciate. Then is the pneumatic bones, which name is indicating that these are the bones where they are going to have the air in it. So these are the bones which contain the air spaces, and these are lined with the mucous membrane. These are mostly seen in the skull bones, as these are present in the ethmoid. Here you can see these cavities or the spaces which are the air spaces containing air cells in it. These are the sinuses in the skull bone. This is ethmoid bone, and these cavities are now known as ethmoid air sinuses. Same you have the maxillary sinus, the frontal sinus and the sphenoidal air sinuses in the skull. Also there is a mastoid process. So these make the skull light. So the air makes the skull lighter. Also they are helping to add resonance to the voice. These are going to act as the conditioning chambers for the inspired air. So these are the advantages of the pneumatic bone, and the one basic disadvantage is that these air cells can easily going to get infected. So the infections and inflammation of the sinuses and these pneumatic bone is common. Here in the radiograph you can appreciate these areas which are radiolucent here. These are the frontal bone having the frontal sinuses, maxillary bone which is going to have these maxillary sinuses here. Then are the sphenoidal sinus, these are ethmoidal sinus, and all these are the pneumatic bones. Here you can also appreciate these one are the mastoid process. Just behind your ear is that dense thick bone, bony projection, which is a mastoid process. This is having these mastoid air cells. So that is the mastoid air cells is also known as the pneumatic bone. So these are the examples of pneumatic. Next category in the classification of the bone is the sesamoid bone. This terminology is taken from the sesame seed, as most of the bones resemble that sesame seed. I hope all of you have seen the sesame seed, but the largest sesamoid bone in human body is the patella, that is the kneecap, and these bones by definition are the one which develops in the tendons of some muscles. So sesamoid bones are the bones which develop and are embedded in the tendons of the muscles. These are sesamoid bones. The periosteum is absent on these bones, and their rubbing surfaces, which are towards the more friction side, they are covered with the articular cartilage and they lack the typical Haversian system. The most important function of the sesamoid bone is that these are helping to minimize the friction on the tendons. As these tendons are crossing the joints, on the joints where their muscles have to produce the actions through their tendons, so these are going to minimize the friction on that tendons. Also, they help to alter the direction of the pull of the muscles. As these are present in between the joints and the tendon, so these are helping to alter the direction of pull of the muscle, and they act as a pulley for the muscle contraction, as it is providing the smooth surfaces for tendons to slide over it. So they enhance the ability of the tendons to produce that particular movements on the joints, and they transfer the muscular forces on the bony tissue to produce different movements. The most important examples, these are the patella bone, pisiform bone, and some bones which are going to produce due to the repeated frictions around the big toe or the first metacarpal bone. These are for the protection of the tendon due to repeated bones. These are typical examples of the sesamoid bone. This is the one which is pisiform bone, and this is present in the flexor carpi ulnaris tendon, and that is one of the carpal bone. And here you can see this patella which is present in the tendon of the quadriceps femoris muscle. These are four muscles together making one single tendon, which is called ligamentum patelli, or that is a patellar ligament which is now going to attach on the tibia. So they are crossing to the tibia, and here this patella bone is going to reduce the friction of the tendon over the joint during the movement because of the presence of this bone. Also, this is going to alter the line of the pull of the muscle contraction, and they are minimizing the friction. Then whenever the muscles they are used for prolonged time, and because of the persistent rubbing and friction on that muscle tendons, then there are going to be the production of the sesamoid bone. So here that is a big toe, and when it's a muscle that is utilized for prolonged time, the repeated friction in the tendon because of its contraction is going to produce the sesamoid bones here. So these two bones, just you can see, just like the sesame seed, these are the bones developing here to reduce the friction of that tendon on the joint's surface, and the repeated movements can have rubbing friction on the tendon, which is going to produce here now that sesamoid bones. The next type of the bone according to the shape, that is the accessory bones. These are the bones which are generally not present in the body. They are not always present, but if they are present, then we label them the accessory bones. These are classified into the supernumerary, Wormian, and the heterotrophic bones. The supernumerary bones are the one which are developing by extra ossification centers. So when extra secondary ossification center, it appears in a bone and that bone does not fuse with its main bone, then it give rise a separate bony tissue, separate bone, which is known as the supernumerary bone. So that supernumerary bone is formed due to extra ossification center, and then the bone which is formed that remain unfused with rest of its bony tissue, then this is labeled as the supernumerary bone. As you can see here that in the foot there are the 7 tarsal bones. This is the talus. The posterior surface of the talus, there is the lateral tubercle which develops by secondary center of ossification. If this lateral tubercle remain unfused with the rest of the talus bone, then this is known as the supernumerary bone and we label it os trigonum. So that is the os trigonum, which is the lateral tubercle on the posterior surface of the talus bone that remain unfused. So here you can see different supernumerary bones. As you have seen, this is the one which is the lateral tubercle on posterior surface of talus bone in foot. If it remains separated and unfused, that is the os trigonum. It is labeled as the accessory bone. And the one here, this is the tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal bone. When it remains separated and unfused from its rest of the fifth metatarsal bone, then this tuberosity of fifth metatarsal bone is labeled as os Weselianum. Again, it is a supernumerary bone. Now here you can see an extra digit, the sixth one, which is because of an extra ossification center here. So this extra digit that develops, that is now the condition is called polydactyly. So this is also showing you the accessory bone in the hand. The other category in accessory bone is the heterotrophic bone. This is the bone which develops in the muscle or other soft tissue. So these are the muscles in the medial compartment of thigh. These are adductor muscle. So basically in adductor longus muscle, it's repeated use and repeated friction in this muscle is going to produce the bone in the adductor longus that is called rider's bone. So mostly in the horse riders, like in polo players, there can be a bone present in the adductor longus muscle, that is the rider's bone. This is the heterotrophic bone, which is again an accessory. Now moving on to the epiphyses and its different types. As you have seen, hopefully you know that epiphyses are the one which are developed by the secondary center of ossification, and they appear in the bone which are existing by the primary center of ossification. So already there is diaphysis having the developing by primary centers, and then on it the secondary center of ossification appears for the epiphyses. There are different types of epiphyses, as these are the ends of the long bone. So the one which is in the joint formation, these ends of the long bones, which are the articular surfaces, these are developing because of the pressure and forces generated in the articular surfaces during the movement. So these are the articular ends of the long bones developing by pressure epiphysis. The traction epiphysis is the one which is developing because of the pull of the muscle. So the traction and the pull of the muscle on the bone that are making it the epiphysis by appearance of secondary center of ossification. So the trochanters and tuberosity in the long bones, these are the traction epiphysis. Atavistic type of epiphysis is the one which is remained as a separate bone in the animals or in the birds, and it functions separately, but in the human that epiphysis is going to fuse with the rest of the bone. The typical example of atavistic epiphysis you have seen as the coracoid process of the scapula. The aberrant epiphysis is the one which is usually not present. So if it is normally it is not present, but if it appears, then this is the aberrant epiphysis. Its example is the epiphysis on the head of the first metacarpal bone and the base of the other metacarpal bones. So these appear in the metacarpal bones. The composite epiphyses are those which are the multiple secondary centers. They are going to produce the multiple epiphyses. So actually this is the combination of the pressure and traction epiphyses joined together, making the upper end of the bone, all the tuberosity, trochanters and the articular heads and the articular surfaces, they are making up the composite epiphyses. The composite atavistic type of the epiphyses, that are actually the composite atavistic centers, in which the primary atavistic centers and the secondary centers for epiphysis, they are joined together and fused to form a single bone. So these primary and secondary centers, they are going to remain separated in other animals and in birds and function separately, but in the human they are joined together. As you have seen in the hip bone, there is ilium, pubis, ischium developing by primary centers, and the crest, the tuberosities, जैसे like ischial tuberosity and all the other crest like iliac crest, they are going to fuse together. So here to show you all types of epiphyses. So you can see here the head of the femur, how globular, spherical and rounded, just making ball like structure due to the pressure effect on the hip bone. And here this is the condyles of the femur. These are also the articular. These are developed by the secondary ossification center, and these are the pressure epiphyses. Now these, the greater trochanter, now this is the lesser trochanters, these projections produced by the pull of muscle, the epicondyles, the adductor tubercle, all these because of the muscle pull, these are the traction epiphyses. This develops by another secondary center of ossification making the epiphyses here. So these are traction. That is the hip bone. There, that is combination of primary and secondary ossification centers. Primary ossification center is making the ilium, the pubic bone and the ischium, and the secondary centers on them is making here the iliac crest, the spines, on the pubic bone the pubic tubercle, the pubic eminence, and here in the ischium is the ischial tuberosity, ischial spine. These all join together, giving you the composite atavistic type of the epiphysis. So the atavistic epiphysis is the coracoid process in scapula, as I have told you. What is by definition? These atavistic epiphyses are those which remain separated and function separately as a bone in the other animals and in the birds, but in the human they are going to fuse with rest of the bones. So these are all types of epiphyses. I hope you understand it very well. So I end up here with today's lecture. I hope you understand it very well. If there is any problem, any query, please you can contact me. Feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.